23,000 years ago, at what's now White Sands, New Mexico, a group of children ran alongside their parents across wet mud. You can still see it. Their footprints survived, fossilized in the ground, right next to the tracks of a giant ground sloth the adults were stalking. And here's the part that stops researchers cold. The kids' footprints don't follow the hunt. They wander off. They double back. They jump. You can see the impact marks where a child leapt from one spot to another, apparently just to see if they could. While their parents were tracking a 600-pound animal that could kill them in one swipe, the children were playing. So did cavemen ever get bored? The honest answer is stranger than a simple yes or no, because boredom isn't just nothing to do. It's a very specific, very modern-feeling itch, the restless discomfort of a mind that wants stimulation and isn't getting any. And the evidence buried in the ground says that itch is a lot older and a lot weirder than most people assume. Start with the obvious objection. Surely there was no time to be bored. Survival was constant, exhausting, every hour spent finding the next meal. Except that's not quite true. Anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer groups, the Hadza in Tanzania, the Juhwansi in the Kalahari, have repeatedly found that they spend roughly 15 to 20 hours a week actually acquiring food. That's less than a modern part-time job. The rest of the time is social, or idle, or spent on things that have nothing to do with staying alive. Some researchers even call early hunter-gatherer life the original affluent society, not because they had more possessions, but because they had more spare hours than the farmers who came after them, chained to fields from sunrise to dark. Not every researcher agrees with that framing. Critics point out the number swings wildly depending on what counts as work. Does carrying water count? Does childcare count? Does walking to a hunting ground count? Some estimates push the real total closer to 40 hours a week once you add it all up. But even the more conservative numbers leave real stretches of unstructured time. Waiting out a storm in a shelter, sitting by a fire after a successful hunt with nothing left to do. Those gaps existed. The question is, what a Paleolithic brain did when it hit one. The answer is written directly into the archaeological record, and it's stranger than they just rested. At Blombos Cave in South Africa, archaeologists found a piece of ochre, deliberately engraved with a cross-hatched pattern, dated to roughly 73,000 years ago. It does nothing. It doesn't cut, doesn't sharpen a spear, doesn't help anyone eat. Someone sat there with a sharp tool and carved a pattern into a rock because they wanted to. That's one of the oldest known pieces of abstract mark-making by any human being ever, and it predates modern humans reaching Europe by tens of thousands of years. Then there's the flute. At Hohle Fels cave in Germany, researchers uncovered a wind instrument carved from a vulture's wing bone, roughly 40,000 years old, with 5 carefully placed finger holes. Someone took the time to hollow it out, measure the spacing, smooth the edges, and tune it, not to hunt with, not to build a shelter, to make sound deliberately, in a specific pitch pattern. Whoever made it wasn't solving a survival problem. They were solving boredom. And then the walls themselves. Chauvet Cave, roughly 36,000 years old, deep inside a cave system where no daylight has ever reached, is covered floor to ceiling with painted lions, horses, and rhinos, rendered with shading and layered line work that makes them look like they're mid-stride. Someone carried fire hundreds of meters underground repeatedly over what was likely generations for a project with zero nutritional or defensive value. You don't paint a running horse on a cave wall because you're starving. You paint it because your mind needed somewhere to go, and the cave gave it a place to put that restlessness. Here's where it gets genuinely wild, and this part is barely a few months old, as far as published science goes. In early 26, researchers examining hundreds of bone artifacts across the American Great Plains identified what they now believe are dice, deliberately shaped, etched gaming pieces, dating back roughly 12,000 years to the tail end of the last ice age. That's about 6,000 years older than the previous oldest known dice from Mesopotamia. People living through some of the harshest climate conditions our species has faced were carving small animal bones into game pieces and rolling them, feeling the exact same tiny spike of suspense you feel shaking a die in your hand today. Before agriculture, before permanent settlements, before writing existed anywhere on Earth, they'd already invented a way to fight boredom using pure chance. And it's not only humans. Watch a captive wolf, a crow, or an octopus with nothing to interact with, and you'll see pacing, repetitive fidgeting, sometimes outright destructive behavior. Signs zoologists now recognize as genuine boredom in other species, which tells you this isn't a uniquely human glitch. It's an old, deep, cross-species discomfort. The difference is that somewhere along the way, our ancestors turned that discomfort into engraved ochre, tuned bone flutes, painted caves, and gambling games. So why would evolution bother building an emotion whose entire job is to make you uncomfortable doing nothing? Because boredom isn't a flaw, it's a nudge. A brain that felt nothing during downtime had no reason to explore, experiment, or notice a new food source 3 ridgelines over. A brain that felt restless went looking. It doodled on a rock, tried a new route to the river, poked at a bone until it made a sound, rolled something across the dirt just to watch what happened next. Multiply that restlessness across thousands of generations, layered on top of brains that were already unusually large and social, and you get exactly the kind of curious, tool-inventing, wall-painting species we became. Boredom may be one of the most quietly productive emotions we've ever evolved. Discomfort as a compass, constantly pointing toward the next new thing, which brings it back to those footprints in the New Mexico mud. While the adults' entire attention was locked onto a sloth that could end their lives in a single strike, the children beside them were jumping puddle to puddle, just because they could, leaving proof of it in the ground for 23,000 years. That instinct hasn't gone anywhere. It's the same restless itch that makes you pick up your phone at a red light, doodle in the margin of a notebook during a meeting, or hum a tune you didn't consciously choose to start humming. You're not broken, and you're not lazy. You're running the exact same ancient software that once carved patterns into rock in the middle of nowhere, for no practical reason at all. And that restlessness turned out to be one of the best survival tools our species ever built for itself.